to Filter Media. This is your girl Felgi, and today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. We'll talk about academic writing. Now, academic writing has many parts. There are some types of questions in academic writing that call for responses that are based towards things to do with programming, mathematics, or statistics. And then we have other types of questions that are inclined towards the social sciences, and these ones mostly they usually require you to respond in a manner or an answer that takes the format of an essay. So these questions mostly there will be maybe a question that requires you to write a descriptive essay or a narrative essay or even a persuasive essay on a particular topic. So for us, our focus is going to be on the ones that focuses on the essay responses. And as we cover this, it is actually very wide, and we are going to have a series of videos on this topic, and our objective will be to cover how to write essays in academic writing, and our focus is on the content, the structure, the different types of formats, and the rules to keep in mind while writing these essays during academic writing. So this particular video is dedicated towards how to write the content and the structure of an essay in academic writing. Now, content is very, very important. You can actually be forgiven for having the wrong structure for as long as your content is right. But if your content is off, then it doesn't matter how perfect your structure is, the whole thing is off and you're going to fail. So that's why we are going to start with content. And if you're writing the content, these are the things that you have to keep in mind. The first thing is the question. So you have to read and understand the question, because it is the question that informs you which type of content you shall write. So if you do not understand the question, you might end up writing a 3,000 worded essay, but it is all off because you're not responding to the question that you've been asked. So the first thing, get the question right, understand it, and know what does this question require me to do. After you have known what the question requires you to do, you go to step 2. So in step 2, what you do is you plan for your work, and under planning, this is where the plotting aspect comes in. So in planning, you will research in an attempt to answer that question, and then after researching, you will know that, okay, this question of mine, this information will go to paragraph 1, this one paragraph 2, up to the very end. Generally, just know what you're supposed to write. This is where the research comes in, and the plotting, and how you're going to marry your points throughout the work. And then in plotting, what guides you is the element of depth. So depth is directed by the number of words stated during the question they buy. An essay may require you to write, maybe give your response in 300 words or maybe 3,000 words. So if it is a response in 300 words, that is something that is short. Mostly they will just state the major points. You attack the question and write the major points. But if they want you to respond, it's still the same topic, but this time around they want it to be in 3,000 words. What you're going to do, you'll be required to give deeper information. So you're going to be digging deeper. So I'll elaborate a bit more on this depth aspect as we go on. Then after you have plotted, the next step, number 3, that is you now write the essay, and this is where the structure comes in. So an essay has 3 parts. We have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So in the introduction, as the name suggests, here you introduce us to the work. So you acknowledge what is going on, and then after acknowledging what is going on, you give us a forecast of what is going to happen in the rest of the work. So give us an introduction, then tell us what is going to happen in the rest of the work. So for example, let's say we have a question such as discuss the impact of sugar production to the economy of Kenya. So that is the question. So as an introduction, what I'll do, I'll first of all introduce us to sugar in Kenya. So I'll acknowledge the fact that there is sugar production in Kenya. I can say Kenya started producing sugar, for example, in 1915, and over the years the country now has 20 sugar producing companies, and actually we produce maybe 20 tons of sugar, and this sugar is exported, a particular amount is exported, and it adds the country maybe 3 billion in GDP. So I have to acknowledge that we have sugar, and then after that I have to state what is going to happen next. So what is going to happen next, this one is summarized in what we call a thesis statement. So a thesis statement, this is one sentence that summarizes your work and tells us what is going on. In short, you're telling us what you're going to do in one statement, and it's called a thesis statement. So in academic writing, thesis statement is compulsory. Sometimes they'll ask you to write it, but even if they don't ask you to write, you're supposed to have it. So in a thesis statement, you just state your purpose. So you can say, after I've mentioned everything about sugar in Kenya, I can say, the purpose of this study is to analyze the impact of sugar production on the economy of Kenya. So there are many ways of stating your thesis statement. You just see the English that you want to use, but at least you should introduce it. So the thesis statement comes either the last sentence of the introductory paragraph or the second last sentence of the introductory paragraph. Then after that, the next thing is now the body. So in the body, you now break down the points that are in your thesis statement. Like for us, our thesis statement was to investigate the impact of sugar production on the economy of Kenya. So what are these impacts? This is what we're going to discuss in the body. So we can say maybe sugar production has helped in employment. So that is going to form our first paragraph in the body. So paragraph 1, I can either choose, depending on the length. If they wanted me to cover maybe 3,000 words, so I am required to give something deep, I can cover this aspect of employment on 2 paragraphs. So let's assume it was just 1 paragraph. Let's say it's not something that is deep, something shallow, maybe 300 words. If I'm going to talk about employment in a shallow manner, I can just say that sugars contributed to employment in the country. Over 6 million people are employed by the sugar industry, and people make a living out of it and they survive. So sugar is good for the country. But if it is something that calls for depth, I will say it has contributed to employment in the country, and I can go ahead to break down this employment. I can say maybe a million people are employed in southern Kenya, another million are employed in central Kenya, the sugar industry, another 4 million are employed in the western part of the country, and out of these people, 30% are permanent and pensionable. The remaining 70%, they are casual laborers. So I'm just giving more flesh depending on the requirements of the question. Then after I've discussed employment, the second thing, still in the body, I can talk about how it has contributed to the improvement of infrastructure. And then finally, I can talk about how it adds to the GDP of the country, because we export part of it maybe to a particular country, and then we earn this amount. So depending on the depth, you will see how much information you're going to give on that aspect. Then after you're done with the body, the next thing is the conclusion. So for academic writing, most of the time the essays will just need a single paragraph for conclusion. Okay, there are other types of essay that the conclusion is required to be longer. We'll cover those ones later. But in academic writing, most of the times, unless they state otherwise, most of the times the conclusion is just a single paragraph. So in your conclusory paragraph, what happens is you are supposed to restate your thesis statement. So as you restate it, you can restate it in a paraphrased form, and then you also restate all your major points, the ones you've discussed in the body, in a summary form in that paragraph. So, and then after that, you can give the way forward. So like in this case, you are trying to say the impact of sugar production in the economy of Kenya. I can say, okay, this the order of doing this varies, doesn't have to stick to the same order. I can say, for instance, in this case, I can say that sugar production has an impact on the economy of Kenya. So I've restated the thesis statement, but I'll paraphrase it. I've said it in a different manner, a manner that is emphasizing it and is also endorsing it. And by the time I'm stating it that way, it's because in my body I already displayed how it is being endorsed. So that's why at this point I'm just like stating, it's no longer more of an investigation, it's something that I'm now affirming. I'm saying sugar production has an impact on the economy of Kenya, and then I'll say, now as I summarize my points, it has contributed to employment, it has helped to improve infrastructure, and it contributes to the GDP of the country. And then I can give a recommendation. I can say, since it is doing all those things, more investment should be placed, or more reforms should be placed in the sugar industry, so that the industry stands. Something of the sort. That is your conclusion paragraph. Now, once you've reached your conclusion, the other thing that you should note, number 4, grammar. Grammatical errors are frowned upon. They do not send a good impression of who you are as a writer, so you want to avoid having them. So before submitting your work, always ensure that you edit the work to check on all those grammatical errors. So luckily we have many apps that can help you in checking your grammatical errors and correcting them. One of them is Grammarly. It's actually good. It gives you even suggestions of what to use, and then you can find sometimes a question may require you to write in a particular English. Maybe they want you to write in American English or British English. So things like Grammarly can help you know which English are you using, because it's going to offer you edit options in that English, that version of English that is required. So for content, basically that is it. I hope you have learned something. We will be covering more in the next videos. Thank you for tuning in for today. Until next time, bye bye and take care.